Hello, good morning, and welcome to the latest MEED webinar. This month, we are going to be looking at the Saudi Giga projects market, taking a look at the latest updates and developments in the vitally important sector right now in the kingdom. We're halfway through the year, so it's a good time to look back over the first 6 months to understand what has happened and looking at some of the trends and challenges facing the market. Now, I'm delighted today to be joined by Autodesk, our partner on this particular webinar. You'll have the opportunity to ask Autodesk questions. Autodesk will be giving their views and opinions on some of the ongoing themes and some of the challenges, as well as looking at AI on this webinar today. And you'll also have the opportunity to ask them some questions during the Q&A session at the end. So just to introduce myself, my name is Edward James. I'm the head of content and research at MEED Global Data. I'll be giving the first section of this webinar today, giving a presentation on the latest updates on the Giga projects program. And here's the agenda. As I said, I'll be giving the first segment, the presentation on the latest updates. And then, as I also mentioned, we'll be joined by Autodesk. I'll be doing a Q&A with them. And then after that, you will also have the opportunity to ask them some questions. And I'm delighted to have with us to do that, Naji Atala, who's head of construction and manufacturing EMEA emerging countries at Autodesk. So we'll hear more from him later. Now, as ever, this presentation is being recorded and you'll have the opportunity to watch it again on YouTube within a couple of days once we've uploaded it. And as ever, you have the opportunity, once this presentation is finished, to ask some questions to both me and to Naji at Autodesk. You have on your menu bar the Q&A box. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time during this webinar, and we'll try to answer them at the end. Now, before I start, this webinar, this presentation on the Giga projects market comes along with it our latest premium research report, which is on the Giga projects market. Any of you who are interested, you've got the QR code on the bottom right-hand corner. You can scan that for more information on it. And of course, any of you who are in attendance today and have registered for this webinar, then you can get a discount, details of which are here in the top left-hand corner. And also, I want to just notify you all, remind you all of our MEED Projects Awards 2025, the long-running celebration of the best projects in the region. Here you can see the 15 different categories. If you have finished a project within the last year, 18 months, and are particularly proud of it and think that it particularly sets a standard of excellence in one of these categories, then please submit your nomination, your entry. On the bottom right-hand corner is a QR code leading you to the entry forms. If you've been any way involved in the project as a client, as a consultant, a contractor, subcontractor, or material supplier, then please submit the entry for your particular project. Each category has a national winner for each of the countries in the MENA region, and then the winners of those go into the overall regional winners, and there will be a celebration and revealing of those winners later on in the year at a gala dinner. Of course, it's independently judged as ever, and we've had over the last few years some excellent winners. So if you want to be recognized for your excellent projects that have been completed in the last year, 18 months, then please consider entering that. Okay, so now let's move on to the latest updates on the Giga projects program. And if you have registered for this webinar, then you will also receive this deck later on today in your email, so you'll be able to look at it or share it with your colleagues in your own time. Okay, just a recap on the latest projects markets development in the region. As we all know, the last 2 years have been exceptional years. We reached a record $253 billion of contracts awarded in 2023, and that was bettered to $288 billion in 2024. So we've never had it so good in terms of the last 24 months, in terms of project activity, way ahead of the previous decade. All-time records. A lot of that, of course, has been driven by the Saudi Giga projects program, but also very high oil and gas spending, particularly in Qatar, Abu Dhabi, and Saudi Arabia, and also by a booming real estate market in the UAE. Now, first 6 months of the year, nearly over. So it's time to look at how the market has performed. Now, some of you may have noticed some of the MEED articles and some of the posts that we've done recently and have known that this year is not performing nearly as well as the last couple of years. In fact, it's well down. You can see 2025, just $62 billion of contracts awarded year to date, and compared with full year numbers for the last 2 years, even in the most optimistic scenarios for the second half of the year, on a pro rata basis, it doesn't look like we're going to be anywhere close to those 23-24 numbers across the region as a whole. Now, a lot of that, and we'll talk about that, is due to a sort of pause or slowdown in spending in the Giga projects program. But a lot of that is also down to lower oil and gas spending across the board as well. So very disappointing first half of the year, I think it must be said. After the sort of exuberance of the last 2 years and the optimism of the last 2 years. Nonetheless, it might not be a bad thing, as it allows the market to cool down a little and focus on delivering this enormous record amount of work from the last couple of years. Now, again, looking at that same data, this time by country, and we can see that the slowdown is most apparent in Saudi Arabia after an all-time record of $150 billion awarded last year. This year, year to date, and of course we still have another 6 months to go, with about $20.5 billion worth of work awarded. And even in the most optimistic scenarios, we're not going to be anywhere near last year's numbers. And most likely we'll be hitting numbers similar to 22, 21 by the end of the year. UAE has performed better. It's outpacing Saudi Arabia. The real estate market in the country is still red hot, and is still moving at pace, and that's helped bring up the numbers. Nonetheless, on a pro rata basis, it does seem we're unlikely to match the last couple of years' numbers either. Now, looking at the same data by sector, we can see that every sector is really down on what one would expect by the first half of the year, particularly in construction. Construction is typically the largest single sector year after year in the market, but you can see contract awards are well down. And again, a lot of that is due to a slowdown in the Giga projects program. But other sectors all being impacted, even though second half of the year tends to be a little better than the first half. We can see that most segments of the market are going to struggle to reach last year's totals. Right, for the rest of the webinar, we're going to be focusing on Saudi Arabia only. And you can see here that with the exception of the oil sector, then the market is down quite considerably on previous years, particularly in the construction segment. Now, let's take a look at focus for the next half of this presentation on the Giga projects program. Just a quick reminder, many of you will be familiar with this slide. On the left-hand side are PIF subsidiaries, most of which are considered to be Giga projects, although there are only 5 official ones as per the PIF and the government, which of those, of course, are NEOM, Red Sea Global, Diriyah, Roshan, and Qiddiya. But we have multiple other PIF subsidiaries. Many of them are as large or even larger than the 5 official ones, such as Numaraba, King Salman International Airport, Murrah Medina, Jeddah Central, and a new one which has been added over the last week, which is Expo 2030 Riyadh, which is a new project company under the PIF. So we can sort of now bundle that under the PIF subsidiaries. Non-PIF obviously also very active right now. King Salman Park, Riyadh Sports Boulevard, the Royal Commission for Riyadh City, also very active in Giga project space. And then we have the other segments, more traditional segments of the Saudi market, the Aramcos, the National Housing Company, the desalination and water companies, National Water Company, SWCC, Saudi Electricity Company, and so on, which actually generally tend to be a larger segment of the market than the other two market segments. And indeed, these we mustn't forget these because they're still also very active segments of the market. Again, slide you'll be very familiar with. We've got about $110 billion worth of Giga projects awarded to date in the kingdom, of about $900 billion in total. So we're still at the very early stages of the Giga Projects program. You get an idea of the Giga projects here. And of course, we've added a new one, the Riyadh 2030 World Expo, which now falls under the PIF. Okay, as ever, we've got a number of poll questions for you. First one today is, have you seen any slowdown in the Giga Projects program in particular? We looked at Saudi Arabia as a whole, it's down, but what about the Giga Projects program? You've got 5 answers. Yes, a lot. Yes, a little. No change. No, it's sped up a little. No, it's sped up a lot. Let's see what you say. So we've got 450 people online live right now. So we have a good representative sample. And with about 250 results in, we can see that half of you, almost half of you are saying, yes, we've seen it slow down a lot. 40% of you have said, yes, it slowed down a little. So almost 90% of you have said it slowed down overall. No change, about 8% of you, and 1% have said, no, you've seen it speed up a little. So the overall consensus is that the market is seeing a sort of major slowdown in Giga projects activity. And that is reflected indeed by the latest data from MEED projects. We can see that year to date, we've seen a very, very small value of work awarded on the Giga projects program, just about $4 billion. And of course, that doesn't compare very well with the $33 billion last year, in 2023, and the $25 billion awarded last year. So indeed, even last year, following the pause in expenditure, we saw that slow down. This has accelerated this year to just $4 billion worth of work awarded. And indeed, there is a major pause and slowdown in activity. Of course, the big question now is when that will resume. When it will spending will resume on it, in what form and in what time frame. But clearly it's disappointing for companies involved in Giga projects. And here you can see just how few major projects have been awarded in the Giga projects program. In fact, only really Roshan and Diriyah have been active this year. Of course, Roshan is partly self-funded by off-plan sales, which helps a lot in terms of delivery. And Diriyah really is, I think, one of the Giga projects which has got a lot of focus and the go-ahead to ensure a lot of it is in place and delivered, certainly by Expo 2030, but also in a fuller sense and more comprehensive sense by 2034 when there's the FIFA World Cup. So it does look like Diriyah and Roshan are pushing ahead faster than some of the other Giga projects right now. But nonetheless, these are disappointing numbers when looking at the last couple of years of spending in Saudi Arabia. The consensus and our view certainly is that the focus in Saudi Arabia now is going to be on event-driven projects. These are projects which have to be delivered by a certain date. So namely the 2034 World Cup, the 2030 World Expo, and the 2029 Asian Winter Games at Trojana, and to a lesser extent, the AFC Football Championships also towards the end of this decade. So just a quick look at these event-driven projects which must be developed over the next few years. The first one is the World Expo. The master plan was revealed fairly recently. You can see here, it's now in sort of 5 different zones, and the official number for the development cost is about $7.8 billion. It's near the airport in the north of Riyadh. And just taking into account the Dubai experience, we know that construction really must start very soon in order for it to be ready in time but for October 2030 for when it's due to open. So this is going to be definitely a focus for project activity in Riyadh and in the kingdom as a whole. There's the location, as you can see, north of Riyadh, very close to King Khalid International Airport, which, as we know, is also going to be expanded into King Salman International Airport, another priority project for the next few years. And indeed, procurement started for the Conic Terminal, Terminal 6, and the new runway for that project. So that's another event-driven project. Part of the expo is going to require a new metro station on the western side on the existing metro line as well. Now, another focus is on the 2030 World Cup infrastructure, particularly on the stadium program. Here you've got an idea of the different stadiums which are being either newly built or expanded, modernized for the World Cup. Key focus alongside the various training facilities required for each team and required by FIFA as a requirement to host the World Cup. As you can see, there are 4 existing stadiums which are going to be refurbished, expanded. We have 8 planned new stadiums, and already we have 3 new stadiums under construction, all awarded. One of those is the Aramco Stadium in Dammam. We also have the Qiddiya Stadium under construction too. And shortly, over the next few months, we should see award of the initial contracts for the Qiddiya Stadium as well. So here's some bit more details on the stadiums. As we can see where they are located, primarily in Jeddah, Riyadh, and Khobar. But there's also going to be one in Abha and one in Neom as well. Although the latter, must be some doubt on the latter, given the sort of slowdown in the line project, even on the first 3 modules. It remains to be seen whether that stadium can be delivered on time. And of course, many of these stadiums are also going to be hosting the AFC Asian Championships in 2027 as well. Right, what are the other priorities? I mentioned King Salman International Airport, the Expo, and the World Cup infrastructure. But these are the other priorities we see Saudi Arabia focusing on over the next couple of years. Well, as we've seen this year, Diriyah and Roshan are the ones that seem to be moving ahead quite fast. For various different reasons. Roshan received some off-plan financing from revenues and sales of its properties, and there's also a pressing need for housing in the kingdom. So that's already awarded several major contracts this year. Then we have Diriyah, of course, which is moving ahead pretty fast, and a lot of that is going to be delivered by 2030. That's the plan. Of course, we also have Trojena, the ski tourism destination, ready in time for the 2029 Asian Winter Games. And then we have also, I think, a return to basic infrastructure, power and water developments. Of course, population's growing, economy's growing, and therefore there's also a need to continue to deliver new power projects, particularly in renewable energy side, and of course associated transmission distribution systems. Then we also have big investment required in water, whether it's treatment, distribution, storage, or transmission. And as with most of the power and water projects delivered over the last few years, most of these will be delivered on a PPP basis using private sector finance, which again makes them easier to be delivered, as they can be delivered off balance sheet by the government. As again, basic infrastructure on transport, particularly in rail and metro. So we're looking at Riyadh Line 7, Q Express as well, Line 2 extension in Riyadh. We've also seen developments recently on Saudi Land Bridge, and potentially also metros being revived in Jeddah and Mecca as well. And finally, associated with that, we've got the King Salman International Airport, for which procurement has also started. So if you were to ask me or MEED in general, what are going to be the focus projects, which ones are going to be more certain to go ahead over the next couple of years, and which there will be the most opportunities. These are the list of the ones that I would respond with, and which I would say are going to be the focus. Okay, next question. Want to see whether you believe the same thing. Which sectors or projects do you believe will offer the best opportunity over the next 2 years? You've got a choice of Trojena, World Cup Stadiums and Infrastructure, Expo 2030, transport projects, power and water projects, or other. Keen to hear your views on these. Okay. So nearly 300 of you have answered, and the winner by a small margin is Expo 2030. 35% of you say that's going to be the best opportunity for you. Then the World Cup Stadium, close behind, about 32%. We then have power and water projects, 17%. Transport projects, 7%. Trojena, 6%. And others at 2%. So it seems that the World Cup and the Expo 2030 are the ones which are taking the most attention, or going to take the most attention from you all over the next few months and years. Interesting. Thank you very much for that. A couple of quick reminders. Please submit any questions you have for us or for our partner on this webinar, Autodesk, for the Q&A session, and also that this is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it online later when we've uploaded it to YouTube, and also that you should be receiving a copy of this webinar presentation if you have registered for this in your email over the next hour or so. And this slide is just taking a look and reminding you of our WhatsApp channel. If you want to get free links and updates on the projects market and economic developments in the region from MEED and Global Data, then please scan this. You will get access to the WhatsApp channel and daily get some interesting updates. I certainly use it a lot to keep informed, and recommend that you all do the same. Right, I just wanted briefly before we end this webinar to go over some other PIF projects, most of which have not yet been formally launched or announced. Now, the next two slides are all based on public domain information. None of this is confidential. It's all available online if you look for it. First of all, I want to highlight that there are other Giga projects or PIF subsidiary projects in the pipeline. And if you go onto the PIF's financial statements, which it releases every year, it gives a list of its fully owned subsidiaries. And within the real estate grouping of those, you can see about 10 or so fully owned real estate companies, starting with Diplomatic Quarter Holding Company, Destinations Development Company, Gulf Coast Real Estate Development Company, and so on, many of which have either projects in the pipeline or actually already under procurement, and those which are under design or master planning right now. I'll give you a flavor for some of these, to give you a heads up on what some of them are. We've got the Central Area Development Company, which is looking at one of the world's largest regeneration projects in Central Riyadh. We have Gulf Coast Real Estate Development Company, which is developing the working name of Project Line, which is a residential, agricultural and commercial development close to the divided zone in Khafji, and between Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. We have Destinations Development Company, which is developing the Monolith Hotel Resort near Al Ula, codenamed Project W. We also have Project Gazelle, which is Hunting Reserves Development Company, which is a development of 3 protected natural reserves in the kingdom. We also have Jabal al-Shifa Development Company, which is development of 3 villages in the Taif region and a scenic route between them. Very beautiful project, including a tourism village. We, of course, have the well-known Project Rise, which is the world's tallest tower, 2 kilometers around the North Pole project in Riyadh, which is the Tower District Real Estate Development Company. And then we have Desert Resorts Development Company, which is Project Dunes, which is a new ultra-luxury, hyper-luxury resort in Shaiba in the Empty Quarter near the UAE border, and as well as having other future ultra-luxury tourism developments. Indeed, for both Project W and Project June's procurement is underway. First contracts have been awarded, as they have on Project Line. So work is underway. Not clear when these projects are going to be formally announced, but there is some key intelligence for you about some of these future projects. Right, long-term outlook, final slide. Yes, we've seen a slowdown in project activity over the last 6 months or so. However, we still got a huge amount of work to deliver that's been awarded in 23, 24, almost $500 billion worth of work. And if you look further afield over the next 5, 10 years, 15 years, we can see that the pipeline for projects in the region in general is huge, is enormous. We have about 2.97, just under $3 trillion worth of known, planned and unawarded projects in the GCC. The largest single market remains Saudi Arabia, nearly $1.6 trillion, followed by the UAE at $750 billion, and then the other 4 GCC states. In terms of the sector breakdown of that, $1.6 trillion is in construction, typically the largest market segment, followed by transport, $413 billion, and then power, $300 billion, and so on. So this is just the known quantum of future projects unawarded. Of course, many more will appear over time. And on the other hand, of course, some of these projects won't go ahead either. But regardless, huge pipeline of projects. So over the long term, the next decade or so, we can be very confident about the amount or number of opportunities that the region is going to provide everyone involved in project delivery. Okay, so that's my segment of the webinar over. As ever, it's being recorded, and you will have opportunity to upload to watch it again in your own time later on. And you will receive a copy of that in your email if you've registered for this event. Now we're going to go on to the Q&A segment of this presentation. And so if you do have any questions for either Autodesk or me, please submit your question in the Q&A box in your Zoom menu, and we'll attempt to answer them in due course. Now, I'm very excited and honored to have with us today Naji Atalla, who's the head of construction and manufacturing EMEA, emerging countries at Autodesk. We are doing this presentation today alongside Autodesk and in partnership with them. We have an opportunity now to ask Autodesk some questions. So if you do have any for Autodesk in particular, please submit them, as I said, in the Q&A box. So I've got Naji, before I open up, first of all, Naji, welcome onto this webinar. And before I open up the questions to the audience today, I've got a few which I'd like to ask you and Autodesk, if I may. And the first one being, could you very briefly explain what Autodesk does? And just for, I'm sure most of us are familiar with Autodesk, but just for those of us who may not be familiar, can you just explain who Autodesk is and what it does?
Sure. Good morning, Ed. Thank you for having me, and good morning to everyone in the audience. We're a leading technology solution provider for designers, engineers, and builders. We operate across 3 industries: the architecture, engineering, construction, and operations industry, which we're talking about today. But we also operate in the manufacturing industry, so anything from making cars to coffee machines to machines that make other machines. And finally, in the media and entertainment industry, so movies, visual effects, and games that people enjoy. We like to say that our customers can create virtually anything, and they rely on our design and make platform every day to bring these things to life.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, obviously, as your job title says, you're deeply involved in construction and manufacturing element of Autodesk in the region. You're speaking to a lot of companies, you're speaking to a lot of project clients, you've got a very good overview of what's happening in the region. What do you and Autodesk see as the biggest challenges facing the market currently and over the next 5 years?
Sure. So at a macro level, the first big challenge that we see is actually demand. There's more work now than any time in history, in recorded history. And the demand comes from a couple of things, right? So there's the demographic changes that we see. Earth's population is increasing. It will continue to increase till well beyond 2050. And then there's a massive move to cities. So the urbanization trend that we used to see before COVID, is arguably slowed down a bit during COVID, but we see it's still as strong. That's in emerging places like emerging countries like China and India, but it's also applicable in the region here. So we know about the kingdom's plan to nearly double the population of Riyadh, for example. So in cities, we need more houses, we need more bridges, we need more schools. And what we need is estimated to be an equivalent of a New York City every month for the next 40 years. So everyone on the call here will be busy for a really long time. Demand in the Middle East is actually still quite strong. I tend to see the slowdown in project award that you were speaking about. It's obviously clear. But I also see it as a recalibration in the market, right? It's a correction to align the demand with the ability of the supply chain to actually deliver on that demand. So it's not necessarily something that's bad long term. The second challenge that we see is the construction industries need to be more sustainable. So how do we reduce the carbon emissions of building and operating assets? How do we reduce waste? How do we increase circularity? How do we make sure that the built environment is more resilient? With more demand, we definitely should build more, but we also should build better. And the decisions that we take now will affect the future resiliency of our cities. We obviously all see more natural disasters, more adverse weather conditions like floods, droughts, and fires, and due to climate change, and these will continue, right? So we need to make sure that we're building more, we're building better, but we're also repairing and protecting our current built environment. A statistic here is that 90% of all our cities are next to water bodies that are prone to flooding events. So we really need to protect our current built environment. The third challenge, and I hear about this quite a lot in the region, is around talent, right? So sourcing talent is now more difficult than ever. It's driven by a couple of things. So in the region, it's due to the demand and the competition. Despite the region being close to some engineering powerhouses like Egypt or Levant or India. But worldwide, we see less people going in schools to become architects and engineers. So construction is not perceived as a high-tech or a cutting edge industry. There's less people going in the domain. With that, there's a lot of people retiring. So retaining that knowledge within the industry is also critical for the future of our built environment. So really, to recap, the challenges around answering the demand, answering it in a better way, and making sure that while we answer that demand, we retain the knowledge for the future generations to build future cities as well.
Thank you, Naji. That's very insightful. I can't believe 40 New Yorks every month for the next 40 years.
Yes.
Wow. People talk about a slowdown. So if you're in the industry, certainly years and years ahead of much work, a load of work to come. That's astounding. Okay, so you've outlined, Naji, those challenges from your perspective. Let's have a look at what our attendees today see as some of the major challenges. So the question is, what is the biggest challenge you face in delivering large-scale infrastructure or giga projects today? Limited visibility across project stages and their impact on cash flow, delays in decision-making, inconsistent workflows and collaboration, lack of understanding of what digital tools can enable, and managing sustainability and compliance. This will be a very interesting question. I'll be fascinated to hear what people say. Just waiting for the answers to come in. Of course, this is quite regional specific. Right, we've had 200 responses so far, and we have neck and neck delays in decision making, 37% of you, 38% of you saying that. Next up, we have another third of you saying limited visibility across project stages and their impact on cash flow. So those are the two dominating ones, 70% plus. Then we have 12% inconsistent workflows and collaboration, 12% lack of understanding of what digital tools can enable, 6%, and 8% managing sustainability and compliance. I think the delays in decision making is particularly acute right now due to the slowdown in Giga projects. And I think maybe in other years, if I'd asked this, that might not have been so prominent, but still very interesting to get your views. 240 of you answered, so that I guess is a very good representative sample and reflects the industry as a whole.
I actually expected the results to be similar, especially with the first answer around limited visibility and cash flow. I mean, there has been a lot of reform in the region on the topic, but it remains something that on people's minds, especially when we talk to contractors and with these really big projects where the risk can be massive due to cash flow changes.
Yeah, absolutely, and absolutely, I completely agree. So it's also what we're seeing and hearing too. Obviously, Naji, you've asked, you've spoken at length about some of the challenges, and we've just seen again here some of the challenges here. Digital transformation. I wanted to ask you about that because digital solutions, platforms, products have a big role to play in easing the delivery and helping overcome some of these challenges. I wanted to ask your view on that and how and the digital world and how it can help companies deliver on time and to budget.
Sure. So I think, for me, digital transformation is simply aligning technology to an organization's current or future business goals, right? So it's not technology for the sake of technology. It's about taking people through an adoption journey to using better processes and better technology platform, but it has to serve the organization's goal. In the industry, I think we've seen several trend shifts or technology or digital transformations that were milestones in how we execute. The first was early in the 80s. We moved from analog design into computer-aided design. It didn't really disrupt how the industry works. It digitized the industry, and there's a bit of a difference here. So we kept our processes, but we used better tools with that first milestone. The second came early 2000s when the industry moved from CAD to building information modeling. And that came with the ability to design in 3D. And at that point, the industry really changed because we started to care about data a lot more. We started to use data a lot more. The third transformation came in the mid-2010s. Building information management, or BIM, got extended into connected BIM with the power of the cloud. And then we saw a lot of adoption come through during the pandemic. So, of course, this transformation any transformation does not make the transformation or the technology that's behind it obsolete. It's a continuous cycle. It adds to it. And to give you an example, Burj Khalifa, still the tallest tower in the world, was built using CAD, was designed and built using CAD. But then, the industry progressed. We started to see BIM mandates in the region, starting with Dubai municipality. And then the industry progressed further in the region, and we started to see connected BIM on all of the Saudi Giga projects. And it usually takes a landmark project in each market to catalyze that change. So the Qatar 2020 FIFA World Cup really helped the construction industry in Qatar mature faster. Expo 2020 was a milestone in the UAE. And the Red Sea Global was really the first Giga project in the kingdom to adopt connected BIM and new methodology of doing things. And we're currently witnessing the fourth transformation in the industry. And as people can imagine, it's being catalyzed by artificial intelligence, right? So now, we all use ChatGPT or Grok or Copilot to be more productive. And we're starting to see this trickle in construction. We're calling the new way of doing things outcome-based BIM. And it's BIM enhanced with AI. And I think it will be critical to help us satisfy both the global and the regional need sustainably, and to be able to cover for the talent gap that we see here.
Actually, you've preempted my next question, which is on AI. It's a hot topic right now. Everyone's talking about AI. But before I ask you that question, Naji, I just want to get everyone's view on AI in attendance at our last poll question. I want to understand, as you said, a lot of people use ChatGPT and so on, but how familiar are you as an audience with the use of AI in construction and project delivery? You've got 4 answers there. Are you actively using it across projects? Are you experimenting with pilots or proofs of concept, aware of it but not using it, or not familiar with it? And this is with regards to construction and project delivery, of course, not in terms of day-to-day ChatGPT usage or whatever. Let's see. And just also a reminder, please, any questions for me or Naji in the Q&A, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. We will be doing a Q&A session opening up to you all in attendance today in about 5-10 minutes or so. So keep them coming. All right, 200 plus answers now. And what's in the lead? Okay, 35% of you say you are aware of AI in construction and project delivery, but not yet using it. 30% saying experimenting with pilots or proofs of concept. 20%, fifth of you are saying you're actively using it across projects. So by inference, 80% of you are not yet really incorporating AI into your project construction delivery processes. And another fifth of you or so are not familiar with it. So I think basically half of the companies here are not really, or haven't started to use AI at all in construction and project delivery. Now, taking that into account, Naji, how can AI exactly help in construction and project delivery? I mean, we all know it's a very powerful tool, but how can we actually apply it?
So I think to start with, what's the good thing that's happening now with the AI discussion is that it's becoming a lot more reasonable, and the industry is getting a lot more pragmatic on what AI can do, right? And I get this from conversations that I have with leaders in the industry. I get this also from Autodesk's Design and Make report, and this is an annually published report where we survey industry experts globally around the factors that impact their business, and then we publish these results, and we will have a link to the audience later on to download the report. So we believe that AI capabilities, whether they're available now or coming, would sit in under 3 big headings or in 3 different buckets: automate, analyze, and augment. So the first is around automate, and this is how AI can help us take away the tedious or the non-value add tasks from the valuable time of engineers and designers. So this could be automating the placement of firefighting equipment on a 3D model, for example, or getting laser scanned data and then automating building intelligence into that data. So that's a really, really impactful use of AI, but it's not very intrusive, right? So it sits with the designers, with the engineers, and it helps them do what they do now, but in a better way. The second bucket is around analysis of complex data. The industry now generates a lot more data than it used to do before, whether the data is structured or unstructured. So files, photos, databases. We actually estimate that the industry now, for each project, generates 5 times the amount of data that it used to generate 1 decade ago. So the insight from this data, and we cannot capture patterns there as human beings, could be something like, look, be careful. The schedule that you have for this project is not realistic because of a certain event. Or you've done similar projects in the past, and here's a good estimate for the material that you would use for the next project. So that's also a very impactful use of AI. Now, the element of AI that everyone wants to speak about is in the third bucket, which is the augment, which is the more disruptive use of AI with generative AI. And that eventually would be very similar to how we use ChatGPT now. So, you can ask ChatGPT to create a document. You can ask Google Video to create a video for you, and then you can specify some requirements, right? So I want the video to be 3 minutes. I want it to, I want this to be the topic. And then you get a video or you get a document. It's not a final product, but it's a decent product. And the same will happen to our industry as well. So we'll be able to ask AI to design a school or a community for 10,000 people. And then we tell AI, I need this amount of green areas, or please limit the embodied carbon on the design, or maximize the sunlight. And then AI will do its thing, will start generating these concepts for the engineers and the designers to start from. And part of this is actually already available in commercial software right now. So the ability to have concept design for buildings, not detailed design, of course, concept design is already in commercial software like Autodesk Forma. And eventually, AI will even look at historical data. We will look at the design, the schedule, the supply chain, and we'll really assess if a project is on track, if a project is at risk, and if it's at risk, what are the areas, what are the elements of risk now. The use of technology, I think, will differ per project type as well. So something like AI would lend itself better to projects with repetition, maybe schools, hotels, more affordable housing, where the design relies more on mass production versus, a landmark project like an opera house where the design has to be bespoke. But the important thing to keep in mind is that with more and more contribution with AI, what would happen is not limiting of the human factor in that whole process, but actually increasing our capacity to deliver more. So I go back to the challenges of an industry, and we look at AI as one of the answers that will help us in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? And it's just going to get better and better, AI. So I mean, I'm still learning it myself, and it's just the opportunities that it can open up. Maybe some of them we don't even know of yet, or haven't thought of. Absolutely incredible. Okay, so yeah.
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
Just a comment on your point. I think, to be fair, we're all learning. I don't think we will know what the end result of how much AI could help us. Actually, it is a journey. And as we go into the journey, we'll be able to see the outcome in a better way.
Very interesting indeed, and something we'll be looking at closely over the next few years, I'm sure. Okay, so we're approaching the sort of final segment of this. So I do want to give the opportunity now to answer some of the questions from the audience. But before I do so, Naji, you were referring to a report from Autodesk. And if you wish to access the report, there's the QR code. So use your cameras to take a photo and scan it. And then you have the ability to download it and read it in your own time. Excellent report, well worth downloading and checking out.
Thank you. And it also reflects the views of the region, right? Because we have over 300 people from the region being surveyed, and the results actually, displayed for the community.
Okay, well, there you are. So it's not just your views; it's those of the ecosphere, the project space ecosphere. Okay. Just before the Q&A, just a quick question about whether MEED can help you in any way, in any of the different solutions that we offer. MEED.com, MEED projects, our reports, marketing solutions, and events. You can just quickly answer that one, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. And I can see lots of questions, a lot of questions for you, Naji. Just waiting for the poll questions to be answered. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for answering that one. And again, just also a quick reminder of our Premium Intelligence report on the Giga projects, the latest updates with everything you've seen today, plus a lot more, 700, 800 pages long. Please scan the QR code and enjoy the discount that those of us in attendance today can enjoy. And then again, final reminder of our MEED Projects Awards later this year. If you have a project you're particularly proud of, it's a groundbreaking project, pioneering project that you've completed over the last 12, 18 months and wish to enter it into one of these categories, then scan the QR code and submit your entry, whether you're a consultant, a contractor, a client, or been involved in the project in any way. Please feel free to enter. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Q&A. Naji, I'll just start with you quickly. The question here is, when do you think projects, particularly contractors, will be required to use BIM in Saudi Arabia? You're talking about mandates earlier. I know there's a couple of ministries in the kingdom have started mandating BIM, and also the Giga projects, as you mentioned. When do you think it will become widespread and adopted as a norm rather than as an exception?
So, if I look at our topic today is the PIF projects. If I look at the PIF projects, the use of BIM, actually connected BIM, is mandated across the board, right? So BIM is used for the design of the project, and then a common data environment is a requirement for the communication between the owner and their supply chain. Of course, these are not the norm of projects worldwide. I would say the kingdom's adoption is rather high as we go up in terms of complexity and size of the project. The average is definitely getting better because of the influence of those projects, but it actually compares to what we see worldwide, where BIM and a common data environment are mandated at around 40% of the projects worldwide.
Hey, thank you very much for that. I'm sure that number will increase over time, inevitably.
Yes.
Okay, question here I'll answer, which is about the future of projects in NEOM. Of course, everyone's always asking about NEOM and the line. As we know, the line for the time being has been rescoped to the first three modules, for modules 45, 46, and 47, around the hidden marina. At the moment, the focus is on the procurement for the raft and foundations and basement. Huge contracts. I mean, we're looking at overall capex for each module to be about $50 billion. So you can imagine the basement and foundation raft works are absolutely enormous. Whether or not they will proceed quickly or not, that is another issue due to their huge cost. But as we know, Trojena is moving fast. Oxygen to Sindalo is almost what has been soft opened already. So there are different elements of NEOM working at different speeds. But we are hopeful, of course, that as a core component of the 2030 vision, that is going to proceed, although maybe over a longer period than we first anticipated. Can we get more information about New Murabba? New Murabba is this huge $50 billion or so project in northern Riyadh with the Muqab cube building as the central element. Procurement is starting for the various different structural elements of the Muqab itself, which is the sort of core initial component of the project. If you read me.com, you'll get details about the various different packages there. But you're looking at a huge consortium to be able to deliver this enormous project. And we would expect to see more news and developments on that and potentially some awards over the next 6 months. And New Murabba does seem to be moving ahead for the time being. Question, is Saudi considering nuclear power? Yes, it is. KCARE has been negotiating with various different technology providers from around the world, French, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and also is in talks with the US. Of course, needs to reach an agreement with the Trump administration about the use of an export of nuclear technology. So yes, Saudi Arabia is looking alongside enormous renewable energy capacity, also nuclear energy capacity for baseline reserves, base reserves for for nuclear power generation. Question, Naji, from your experience, how open are construction stakeholders to using AI?
So I think the scale of the projects that we deal with in the region here forces the ecosystem to be a bit more innovative or disruptive in testing new technologies, right? And AI happens to be one of these technologies. We see people trying to understand what it can do for them, but it's not really just limited to AI. So we have the same questions about things like digital twins, So how can we take all this data, all this great data that's being generated in the CapEx phase of the project into its operation phase later on? We have similar questions about how can we answer the demand by designing from a kit of parts, for example, and then going into complete modular construction. So I don't see that AI has a separate track here in terms of how people feel about it. But in general, there's a big appetite in the region to test new technologies that can lead to better project outcomes.
Thanks. And I've got a question here about sustainability. I mean, sustainability is the key issue, one of the key issues today, given the sort of amount of embedded carbon in construction generally. How do digital products, platform solutions, how can they help improve sustainability generally?
So a couple of things. I think by simply designing better in BIM, we start that process, right? So we already start reducing waste and reduce rework on site. But BIM allows us to have early decisions about the assets. For example, you can directly simulate the amount of embodied carbon in each design. You can actually even simulate the operational carbon later on and do scenarios that what happens if I rotate the building by 2 degrees and the hot summer of Jeddah, would that make my cooling load less, right? So technology now allows us to do this, and it's mainstream. It's no longer something that is disruptive. I think in the future, sustainability outcomes would also be built in AI algorithms. So we would look at one of the requirements of the algorithm would be, look, for my building, I need it to be net zero, right? And then we would get that initial design from the algorithm. And then engineers do what they do best, which is make decisions, make trade-offs on, do I increase the cost of building my asset because operationally it becomes, more sustainable, less operational cost. And it's things that we see now, and AI will also play a big role in making sustainability decisions later on. And that's a big topic covered in the report, by the way, in the design and make report.
And just for everyone here, this is again the link to the Autodesk report. If you're interested in checking that out, scan this QR code here and get the opportunity to download it and read more. Excellent report, by the way. Question here. What has the recent geopolitical developments in the region, will it have any impact on the construction projects market? And in my opinion, no. I think if you look at the drivers for project activity, investment in the region, I think those are very much tied to long-term visions, economic diversification, economic prosperity. They are not, I don't think, dependent on external factors and will go ahead one way or the other. So I don't see any impact on Dubai real estate, for example. I don't see an impact on the Giga projects program. And in any case, I believe the situation has calmed down a lot, and if anything has shown that the GCC states are largely impact free from the situation. So I don't believe that's going to be a major issue that's going to affect the performance of the market this year or going forward. Okay, I got a quick question about what's the reason for the slowdown, and it's a good question because I didn't really address that. The reason, frankly speaking, is that the financing for start, there isn't necessarily all the cash as projects have got. The costs have increased due to higher interest rates, high construction and logistics costs. There has been a need to reevaluate and recalibrate, as Naji said, the the Giga projects in particular, look at the timeframes, look at the rescoping, and while the government is doing that, it's naturally paused a lot of the spending. So the hope is that this will resume once the whole Giga project program has been reconfigured. We also have the event-driven projects, which now need to take priority and government finance. So that is also being added to the mix that has resulted in this slowdown. Multiple different reasons, but essentially down to funding at the end of the day, which is why PPP projects are going to be so important going forward, as well as contractors bringing finance to project. I noticed there was a question about contractors financing projects or using export credit agency finance, and that's certainly something that's sort of a lot of the clients are looking at. And indeed, other means of funding projects, for example, selling land on Giga projects to investors who and then leasing that land off them. Right, lots of questions about AI and digital transformation, which I will ask.
There's an interesting one about usability and how enterprises move forward, I think, and into newer technologies. And I think here there's in any transformation, there's the big trinity of people, process, and platform or technology. For the past 10 or 15 years, the easy part was the technology, actually. And any transition is a change management exercise where people have to understand the why. What's in it for them? What are the long impacts on their careers and their development, the well-beings of their careers? Because, some people fear that technology will always replace them. So when having these discussions with leaders in the region, the first thing that I stress to make any transition or any transformation successful is to actually have the stakeholders on board by understanding the why and understanding the impact of the change to the overall goals of the organization. It's not about plugging a newer piece of technology, whether it's AI or something else. It's about the why and taking people across that journey.
Okay, I've got a couple of other questions for you. How can Autodesk help in projects progress automation and compare design versus actual and make updates when needed in a simplified way?
So there's a very nice case study that comes from Qatar. It was on if I understand the question correctly, it was on the structure of one of the stadia, the Lusail Stadia, where the designers were continuously laser scanning the structure and then comparing the laser scanned model to the design model, so that they can know of any differences between the as-built and as-designed cases, and that would trigger actions for them to either rectify an error or actually accept it as an update to the design. So what we're trying to do now, what we're working hard on, is to bring AI into creating intelligent 3D models out of that laser scan data, so that comparison can actually be much faster and much easier.
And I've got another question for you. How is Autodesk approaching usability in its newer technologies? Are you seeing much friction from enterprises transitioning from more traditional workflows, or has the shift been relatively smooth?
So I would say that some of the more innovative customers we have in the region, they actually push us to give them newer technology at a faster rate. They have deadlines, they have really big projects to deliver on, and they have these smaller teams that are extremely nimble and can go and research their niche requirement. So I really believe that the industry in the region here on the largest or on the flagship projects is among the most advanced in terms of workflows that I've seen worldwide.
Thank you, Naji. Okay, we're slightly running over time, so we'll have we'll try and answer a couple more questions. But if we don't answer them, all of them, then we've got a note of them, and I'm sure both myself and Najee will be happy to try and come back to you offline afterward to answer them. Got a couple of questions about Riyadh versus Western region and Eastern region. It does appear that Riyadh is the central focus of investment spending over the next couple of years, with both the World Cup and, of course, Expo. And then if we take the metro, the King Salman International Airport and the metro projects as well, it does seem that Riyadh is going to take the bulk of spending. However, in regards to the Eastern province, we are now starting to see things like the Gulf Real Estate Development Company. We're seeing the Rig Oil Development Company and the new Desert Resort Real Estate Company in Sheba. So we are beginning to see more and more investment going in through Giga projects and PIF subsidiaries into the Eastern province. And then around Jeddah, of course, we've got Jeddah Central, for example. We've got the Al Balad urban development company revitalizing the older parts of Riyadh within a cultural heritage. And of course, we've got the Red Sea Global Project and Al Ula towards the western parts of Saudi Arabia. So Jeddah is also going to be a focus, and we've also got a couple of World Cup stadiums there as well. Question about PPP and the stadiums program. Yes, as I understand it, one or two of the projects for stadiums in Saudi Arabia will be delivered on a PPP basis if successful. Obviously, we've got some already under construction, but we'll wait and see for details about that. Although there isn't a reference point, I believe, for a PPP stadium in the region. So it would be interesting to see how that plays out. One last question for you, Najee. Which is about the best approach for workflows with digital products with regards to industrialized construction. What is that best approach?
So it's a topic that I love, probably because of my background. So because we operate in construction and manufacturing, we think a lot about this. And there's three ways of doing things. The first is taking a building, designing it as if it's going to be constructed, and then chucking the design to a contractor and telling them do industrialized construction there. That's the norm of the industry. That does not work really, really well, right? It's very inefficient. The contractor would need to do a lot of customization of the design, and it's not inherently easy to manufacture. The second one, which is something that we're seeing more of, is called Design for Manufacturing and Assembly, so DFMA. And this is where the designers are actually using a kit of parts to design the asset. This could be, specific slabs for the foundation, specific panels for the walls, or even specific volumes, so specific bathrooms or specific kitchens. That makes it a lot easier to actually manufacture these components in a factory, and it makes it a lot more scalable. So complexity goes down, cost goes down, and adoption can increase. The third one, which is the future, is AI driven. So it's taking that kit of parts and putting it in an algorithm and asking the algorithm to redesign the asset based on a minimized kit of parts. And the analogy here is, we can create a lot of design diversity from specific Lego blocks, right? It becomes the same. So AI can look at the outcomes that are required from that building or from that bridge, and then go back and redesign it based on that kit of parts. It could actually also optimize, and we've done this as a research project with Airbus. It can optimize the layout of the manufacturing facility that will manufacture those kit of parts. So, I'm really optimistic about partnerships in the region here that can actually drive modular construction going forward, first into the FMA and then AI.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of fluid developments and evolution in that digital transformation space and the use of digital solutions generally in construction delivery. And Thank you very much, Najia Talla, Head of Construction Manufacturing, EMEA at Emerging Countries at Autodesk, for your insights today. It's really interesting. I know I can tell from the number of questions what we've had that there's a big interest and a need to know more from our audience today. So thank you again, Najia Talla, for that, and for Autodesk, who have supported us on this webinar. So with that,
pleasure.
And so with that, it just leaves me to say thank you very much for all attending today and your questions. I hope you found it valuable. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with a webinar presented by Suda Development, a PIF subsidiary project company, which of course is developing the Suda Peaks project in Aceh province. Procurement is due to start very soon for that very interesting, iconic project. And our Suda Development will be giving an outline of the different packages, timeframes, and scope of works for its projects, and also how companies can register and partake in the project development program. So thank you all very much, and see you all very soon. Thank you.